Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of the Renewable Hydrogen Summit. It's a great pleasure to see so many of you coming today to discuss progress on renewable hydrogen. Some people are still coming in. Please have a seat as quickly as you can. This event comes at momentous times for Europe, and a lot of work has been placed in this event. And counter to what has been reported in the press this morning, this event is not solely organized by Solar Power Europe alone, but also an alliance of other organizations, Wind Europe, Breakthrough Energy, and of course, all the companies that are supporting the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition, spanning the entire value chain. Since the creation of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition, Europe has made huge progress in establishing groundbreaking policies to scale up renewable hydrogen. This is thanks, in big part, to the leadership of the European Commission. These policies really have the potential to decarbonize deeply hard-to-electrify sectors and reduce Europe's dependence on imported fossil fuels. Now, looking at this momentum, time has come for a reality check to continue building on this momentum. And the natural question, of course, is, are we on track to meet the ambition? And the answer is no. We are going in the right direction, definitely, but we are not doing enough to get where we need to be to meet that ambition. The sector still faces significant challenges, and these require urgent and bold answers from policymakers. The cost of inaction will be greater than the investment required. Let's be very clear with this. Today we will discuss these challenges with the aim to find a beginning of answer. After a renewable hydrogen market outlook by colleagues from Bloomberg, we will deep dive in addressing the biggest challenge of all, the cost of renewable hydrogen. Then we will have another session talking about a critical question. To get a renewable hydrogen economy, we need strong value chains here in Europe. Then a third session will delve into the key success factors shaping Europe's leadership in electrolyzer manufacturing and how we can make the future of this technology here in Europe. All this will be followed by a cocktail reception all together. But before that, we will have an exclusive fireside chat. I have the great honor and pleasure to welcome the speakers of our keynote opening right now. I'll start first with welcoming Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Maroš Šefčovič, to the stage. It's a pleasure to have you with us. I will then welcome on stage Olivia, Breese, CEO, Power to X at Ørsted and Chair of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. For everyone, in the middle, for example. And last, Håkon, Volldal, President and CEO of Nel Hydrogen and Vice Chair of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. Welcome on stage. Thank you for being with us today. That's a great honor and great pleasure. Right, let's jump straight into it. I'll start with you, Executive Vice President, if you don't mind, with a simple question, but serious one. Climate change is intensifying. We are also navigating through geopolitical difficult times. where energy policy has become security policy and where the need for strategic industrial autonomy in Europe has never been so important. Why renewable hydrogen is so key to make Europe more resilient and stronger economy from your side?
Well, first and foremost, François, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and I really would like to thank all of you for coming. And when I was coming to this room and I saw, how the stir has been crammed with the people who wants to be part of this discussion, and of course that's extremely encouraging, not only for us in the European Commission, but I would say for all industrial and political leaders across Europe, that there is this momentum, there is this mobilization of forces, and your sector wants to be the best in the world, and this is what should be our priority. I think you named, I would say, the key factors very eloquently, François. I think we never had worse summer than this year. For the first time in the history of the EU, we had to trigger the crisis management mechanism for big fire in Greece, enormous flood in Slovenia, almost at the same time at two places, few hundred kilometers from each other. And I think that we are, from all corners of Europe, we all had our extremes this summer. On top of it, you very rightly referred to geopolitics. It's not only Russia's war in Ukraine. We have now treble images and events happening, and images coming from Israel, from the Middle East. So the fact is that we are living in totally different world. It's much tougher neighborhood than it was before, and I think Europe, if it wants to remain leading power in politics, the biggest single market in the world, if we want to sustain our social standards, we just simply have to be much more strategically autonomous. We have to be economically strong, and we have to be as independent as possible, so we have our autonomy of action for us. And one of the key factors there is also, I would say, accepting the fact that dependencies are super costly. Look how much we are paying for our dependency on the fossil fuels, how much we paid for it in the last year, how much money we've been paying to Russia for the fossil fuels, but let's be honest, how much money we are still paying to the suppliers of gas and oil from across the world. And we are talking about hundreds of billions of euros every single year, and on top of it, very often this comes with different kind of strings attached. So it's not only an economical challenge, but it's also, I would say, the political and very often diplomatic challenge. So therefore, the clear strength we are pushing on strategic autonomy, relying more on our indigenous sources of energy, like renewable hydrogen, like solar, like wind, because these are our sources, and it's also absolutely within the beliefs and ideals and the lifestyle of the Europeans. So as you said, we are doing the right thing, and I totally also agree with you. We need to accelerate, and therefore, for me, as you know, I am in the job of the Green Deal since just few weeks, but this is clearly my hydrogen week. We started together with my boss, with the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, our first clean transition dialogue with your colleagues from the hydrogen industry. Now I'm with you, and very soon we will have also the hydrogen week here in Brussels. And I'm glad that we are creating this momentum, this interaction, because we need to listen to you, we need to talk to you, and also you need to network among yourselves, because I think this is clearly a huge collective effort. So from this perspective, I just also want to send this very clear political message. You're a priority for us. We're going to fight for European industry. We want you to not only stay here, but to thrive here. And we simply, clearly, as being pioneer in tackling the climate change, we should be also pioneer in all future-oriented technologies.
Very strong words. Thank you very much for that. That's a nice transition to Olivia then. How is your company leading the renewable hydrogen race? And in the end, what's your assessment as well of what policymakers have done for renewable hydrogen so far?
Well, I think before, I think before I get into that, I think as the chairmanship of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition, I think we should pick up on your words, which I think were very, very clear, very intense, but also I think you made the point very clearly that the only way that we can build the sector that we need to build for Europe is in coalition. And it's no accident that the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition is called precisely that. And we need all actors in this sector to move forward step by step by step together. And I think that it's a good moment to pay tribute to the work, François, that you and the team have done in bringing everybody together. So I'd like to thank you for that as well. And so specifically in terms of what are we doing, I think that goes very much back to your second question around what more can Europe do? Because we at Ørsted, we have taken one of the very first final investment decisions on a commercial scale project. We've taken a final investment decision on a 55,000-ton e-methanol project in northern Sweden. We call it Flagship 1. And the methanol from that project is destined for the shipping industry. And we took that final investment decision before, we took it in December, we took it before the legislation was in place. We broke ground before Fuel EU and the maritime demand targets were in place. And I think it's really important and valuable to have that regulatory framework, but it's also really important and valuable to recognize that what we need to do now is to scale. And the industry cannot rely on first movers to make those kind of brave and possibly slightly foolhardy, but let's say brave decisions. Industry needs to be able to scale quickly, and that means it needs both a consistent political framework, but it also needs funding, and it also needs infrastructure. And I think with those things, it will be possible to make the learning loops, which are otherwise impossible if you rely consistently on first movers, because first movers cannot feed their learnings out as quickly as is necessary into the wider sector.
As an introduction question, Håkon, I'd like to ask you, how is your company, electrolyzer manufacturer, leading the race for renewable hydrogen, and what's your assessment of what has been achieved so far?
Thank you, François. We at Nel, have built 1 gigawatt of annual production capacity for electrolyzers in Europe. We have 500 megawatt of production capacity for PEM, so in total 1.5 gigawatt of annual production capacity. During a time where demand was limited, so we have invested hundreds of millions of euros into scaling up the existing technologies and hiring hundreds of people that can support projects and deliveries of those products. Then we're also, as many here in this audience, investing a lot of money into future generation technologies, because on the one hand, we need to scale up what we have available today for those that want to implement projects now. But to make this industry thrive going forward and to unlock the real potential, we also need new innovations. We need cheaper technology. We need more efficient technology, and we're also investing into that. So that's our role in this, making more projects feasible and viable by bringing down the cost of electrolysis. In terms of the European Commission's work, I would say, if you had asked a few years ago if I would believe that we would have the legislative framework that we have today, and that we would have the numerous support mechanisms in place, my answer would have been a clear no. I wouldn't believe it at all. So I think, to the credit of the Commission, that this period has been unparalleled in terms of the progress we made on legislation and support. I think that is fair to be said. In Europe, we typically start with a stick. And I think we have the sticks now. We have the demand-side targets, and we have the delegated act and the definitions ready. What I do think is lacking is a little bit the carrot. We do have a carrot, but in my opinion, it's too small, and we have sliced and diced it. So it's very hard for those that would like to implement projects to actually get a bite of that carrot. And moreover, we're handing out parts of the carrot to regions of the world and non-European suppliers that don't offer us the same opportunity to compete in their markets.
Executive Vice President, back to you. So, Olivia and Håkon, hinted at some good things, but also some hurdles.
We need more carrots.
Big carrot.
Big carrots.
To your point, we are entering the next phase of the European Green Deal with roughly less than 300 days to finish the job. Where will be the priorities of the European Commission in that specific time frame?
Clearly, we've been working on the carrots. I can tell you that. No, there are several things because I know that our industry and also our citizens, we are going through the rough patch right now, and I mean, you could feel it in the society that simply it was too much history over the last 3 years. We had COVID-19. We still have a war in Ukraine. We are paying the price for dependencies in the form of still very, very high energy prices, and especially the last year was like extreme in that regard. And now we see what is happening in the Middle East, and all this, any slight movements, because still, I would say the energy supplies and especially the gas supplies are so tight. So immediately you see how it is kind of impacting the prices. So the overall environment is quite volatile, and therefore I have full understanding that for the business leaders, these are not easy times to plan the strategy, to look for the investments, to calculate the cost, to make the business plans, and especially if they apply for the funds, and it takes 1 to 2 years to assess it. So the initial presumption, how much would it cost, is completely different because of energy pricing and, of course, because of the inflation factors. So what we would like to do in the next 300 days, as you said. First and foremost, I think that, of course, the world will not finish there, because I see also as a very important job of this commission we are now completing what needs to be completed in the form of legislative work. We still have under the Green Deal several processes which are called in Brussels English trilogues to be completed. But at the same time, we are all feeling that we are entering the new phase. How we are going to bring, I would say, all these targets, how we are going to implement the legislation, how we are going to bring it to the life. And that, I think, should be our effort, and that should be kind of our handover note to the next Commission, to the next European Parliament, and to the leaders for the next period. So to make the best of that remaining time, first and foremost, we started this clean transition dialogues, because we want to discuss with you what we can collectively, I like the word coalition, what we can do together to accelerate the investment, because it's absolute key. And we need to find the new ways how we can combine public with private, with leveraging, with promotional banks like EIB, KfWs, and other banks, and to have very serious discussion also with the financial industries, that we would need to adjust some of the financial products to actually 21st century economy, that the lease for the EV would be different than the lease for the combustion engines, that the financement of wind park is completely different than it was, I mean, many years ago, financing for the thermal power plant. And we need to kind of find that balanced approach in that regard. We also want to work with you on, I would say, horizontal, but also project-based level if it comes to permitting. I mean, simply it takes forever in Europe. Let's be honest about it. We kind of proposed different political and legal solutions on the European level. Not every member state transpose them as they should. But instead of kind of having the, I would say, theoretical or horizontal discussions, and I invited the colleagues around the table on Tuesday, but I also would invite you, if you have, let's say, the systemic problem with the permitting for the systemic projects upon which you are working on, that it's really kind of make it or break it, that it could really change the scale of what you do. Let's work on it together. I mean, we have no problem. I personally have no problem to discuss it with the relevant governments. We do not want just to criticize. We want to help. We want to find the solutions. And as you know, I was working a lot on European batteries, and And we've been working very closely on the concrete projects, just to make sure that this or that key projects happen, that it's not like bogged down because simply that's new type of business. Permitting office didn't have experience with that type of a business before, so it's somewhere on the desk forever because simply there was not, let's say, capacity built in the public administration to deal with this issue. If that's the case, let's discuss it. Let's work with the governments, with national, regional authorities to resolve it. Then I think what is very important is that we have to be much vocal and much stronger on creating a level playing field.
Yes.
Totally, as you said, I mean, we should be much more prouder and much more assertive on Made in Europe approach. I think everyone does it. It's very clear that we should do it as well. And I think that first area where we can really try is to also kind of evolve our thinking and approach to public procurement. I think we simply should gradually depart from price-only criterion. We have to put much more in the front the competitive sustainability approach, that for us it's also important carbon footprint. Where did you get the critical raw materials from? What kind of standards been respected when the extraction of these critical raw materials was done? What kind of energy you've been using when you've been building this type of equipment? Because I think that this is something what our European manufacturers need, but I think it's also a good message to the world that what we are promoting, what we are buying, has to be at the global standards which respect the Paris Agreement and all the global commitments we have undertaken to be climate neutral in the second half of this century. And of course it goes hand in hand with not being so shy to use trade defense instruments, because I think we are in that phase where we simply need to project our clear attitude that European industry is very important for us. We've been the pioneers, we want to stay that way, and we are ready to fight for it. And I think that's something what we are currently considering and what we are currently working on.
Now, you've touched upon several key topics, and we forgot to take the time to really go into that. You said one first thing, bringing this industry to life. You also mentioned Made in Europe. We'll come back to it just now. Let's start with you, Olivia. Bring it to life. How do we basically scale this industry? What's still missing, basically, for it to come from ground?
I actually thought Håkon said it very well. What we really need is more carrots. But I think we need more carrots, and let's be a little bit more explicit about what I mean there. Mm-hmm. What we need is clear, transparent funding mechanisms that allow developers to plan their pipelines. So what we have at the moment within Europe is a patchwork. I'm sure you've heard this before. Is a patchwork of different funding instruments. Some of them work very well. Some of them we hope will work very well. Some of them are rather slow. And the need to then piece together those different funding instruments, always in the recognition that you're not permitted to have several different funding instruments for a single project, particularly at this time, as you rightly say, of very high inflation and very significant challenges, not only on the power side for the production of hydrogen, but also on the supply chain. That makes it very difficult. And then on top of that, you have mechanisms which require the EU to individually evaluate projects and to decide on the basis of paper applications which projects will be successful, which projects will not be successful. And actually developers themselves don't know which projects will or will not be successful. And so that project by project approach, it's not efficient. And then finally, the Hydrogen Bank. We are, I think, very, very excited about the pilot auction for the Hydrogen Bank. I think the Hydrogen Bank has a lot of potential. One thing I would say about the Hydrogen Bank is that it does not specifically require the hydrogen to be used for hard-to-electrify sectors. So it does not specifically restrict the use of hydrogen to those areas where we know it is needed the most. But also, really importantly, it's an auction. And we can all agree that we are building a sector very deliberately from the top down. But it is a sector which is absolutely nascent right now. It's a baby. And we watch offshore wind having its own troubled adolescence. And we see the challenges that it is having from auction frameworks. Actually, to start in a race to the bottom for hydrogen projects to be required to compete with one another right from the beginning, it makes it very, very hard for developers to plan their pipelines, for my colleagues in the supply chain to plan their scale up. It makes it very hard for off-takers to know when molecules will be available to them, because you go to your off-taker and you have the conversation, you say, well, I hope we win in the auction for the hydrogen bank, but I don't know. And at a time when actually what is needed is a lot of projects being brought forward and risk being pushed to developers and taken away from the Commission, it is that implementation stage that we need more than anything else.
Since we are talking about financing already, I would like to turn the question to you, Håkon. What's your take on this? We have a huge amount of projects announced, flourishing number, and we need to look at the reality. The number of projects getting to FID, final investment decision, is very limited. And not to speak about the number of projects being constructed. Only 4% have started construction. A key reason is the lack of funding, and something obviously needs to change. What is needed to change, Håkon, from your side?
If I knew that, all the details, I would happily disclose it, but I don't think there's one single trigger. I think there are many aspects. First of all, we need to continue the innovation on the technology side. The technology is a key enabler, and we have to do our part. We need companies to be pioneers and be willing to do projects even though they're not financially viable, and invest into it with deep pockets to get the learnings. But what I do think is that we have those companies that are willing to be pioneers and do projects even though they don't compare attractively to more traditional oil and gas projects, for instance. And they're willing to do the first project, but they're not willing to do the second, third, and fourth project. And we make it very hard for them to start the project, because then they need to bet on the available technology today, knowing that that technology might not be competitive 10 years from now. But you're going to live with that technology, whether you produce steel or methanol or ammonia. You need that production plant to go on for 20 years. And the electrolyzers might last for 8 or 10 years. So why take a chance today when you can wait for tomorrow and have something which is much better? That's where the subsidies come in. The subsidies are a way of rewarding the early movers to get to large scale quickly, help us as suppliers industrialize. And when we industrialize the existing technologies, we take that money and we pour it into new development. So there's a cascading effect, a trickle-down effect, starting with getting these projects to life. And to me, it's about money. Yes, regulations will help. Yes, standardization will help. Yes, cutting red tape will help. But ultimately, it's about the money, and it's not because of lack of interest from the private sector to contribute. I mean, let's be honest, 70, 80, 90% is contributed by the private sector. But it's needed to sort of beef up that funding and beef it up during a short period of time, rather than spreading it out over the next decades. I hope we don't need subsidies 5, 10 years from now. Let's be honest. I mean, we can't be an industry that is based on getting taxpayers' money to work, but we need it now. It's now. Let's make the carrot big, and we'll chew on it for the next 3 years, and we'll make it happen.
Very important calls. 2 leading companies that are willing to go. But a quick reaction from your side. Yeah. In the end, we have the Hydrogen Bank, great tool, first of its kind here in Europe. How can we mobilize the necessary funding behind it?
I would say that there are several, very important elements to be worked on. The first one, I agree with you that especially the funding for the projects of your magnitude, of your scale, that are supported through different fragmented resources. And therefore, what we are now discussing with my colleagues from this Green Deal cluster is how can we create more firepower from the funds we have at our disposal. We have like dozens of billions of euros in the modernization fund, in innovation fund. Of course, I mean the precise volume of these funds depends on the price of the ETS. But currently, I mean, we are talking if you put just these two funds together to something like between 70 to 80 billion euros. So that's the firepower, which is quite important. Then we have just a transition fund, and indeed, very often, what was the first problem? One, that the accumulation of the funds was not permitted, so that you cannot fund certain projects from two different funds. So we are looking at it because we think that we really need to use every single cent we have at our disposal to promote the technologies of the future. And clearly, green hydrogen is the technology for the future. We need for the transition of energy-intensive industry. We need it for heavy transport. We need it for a lot of different sectors to be modernized. Speaking about the hydrogen bank, this 800 million euros auction, that would be a pilot project. I think we all need to learn. We never done it before, so it would be for the first time. So I think, of course, it will be very important also for you to participate, to give us the feedback, and I think we have to learn it together to optimize it, that it would be a tool which would work for us. And two more points I would make. As you know, I'm also responsible for the kind of management, and we've been putting together the joint purchase of gas, because simply we just needed to scale up and to make sure that we would get better deals when we come as a Europe together with a clear aggregated demand, with, I would say, the political might of the European Union as such. And I have to say that so far we did 3 big rounds of tenders, and it went, touch the wood as we do in my country, beyond expectations. It went very well. And I think that to kind of overcome this type of chicken and egg situation, where you have the companies who are willing to produce the green hydrogen, but you do not know who will be your off-takers, and you have the companies like ThyssenKrupp and others who would like to make the green steel, but they do not know where the green hydrogen would come. And then you have a transmission system operators to whom we talk, we are ready to adjust our pipelines and compressor station and everything we need, but what is the volume, what is the capacity? And I think we will be starting piloting with this hydrogen bank, but then I think again that's my request to you, so you can ponder over it in your discussion. I think what we need, and that would be a very important signal from you, what kind of volumes we are talking about. What you think that looking at your value chain, what is kind of realistic offtake for the green hydrogen, let's say between now and 2030. Where would it be coming from? We would like to make some kind of atlas of projects, so we would also need what does it mean for the transmission system network. And then, of course, also, if you look at the plans, how much you believe that within the next 5 years you will be ready to produce. To be even simple, what's the gap? What's the gap? What we have to focus on, and I think this, I would say, aggregation of demand, aggregation of offtake would really help us a lot in having more precise figure, to have proper planning, and also to channel the proper investments. So what can I also promise you is that we would look at every single cent we have in our European budget from different funds, how to make them more available, how can we accumulate them more, and how can we also accelerate and speed up the process of approving these projects, because we as a commissioners, we like to talk about the billions, but I'm talking a lot to the business leaders, but also to the mayors, as I did this morning, or to the citizens, and I know that it's not so easy to get to the European funding. And if you compare the the time frames, the complexity, when you can get funding. In other major economies and in Europe, we are not usually, compared in a positive sense. So we would need to accelerate that project and to offer also something like kind of advisory portal, one-stop shop where we can advise the business promoters. So this is where we should start. This is what we believe would be the best funding. And the last point, I would say, I think it would also help us if you, as important business leaders, would make the presentations as you do to us, because I know how important and valuable this is for me, also to your national governments. Yes. Why you have the problems with the common aggregation or common purchase of hydrogen? I honestly don't understand this, and we have a big discussion about it in the council. Why you wouldn't like, to have this one-stop shop approach on European national level if it comes to the permitting? Why we cannot really do this as a Europeans? Because I think only in that case we can really cover that huge distance in very short period of time we have between now and 2030. And I think the last thing we should be kind of aiming for is that we would develop the hydrogen industry, and we would be importing hydrogen from abroad. Let's make it in Europe. If we are talking made in Europe, let's make it really here in the European Union.
About the made in Europe, let's take just a few minutes. We need to be mindful of time here to discuss about it. The future of electrolyzers must be made in Europe. Håkon will very much agree with me. How do we do that, Håkon?
Well, I had this long speech prepared about what to do, but I think Mr. Šefčovič himself commented on everything I wanted. So to me, it's if you can deliver on your very strong message that you delivered about the intention to keep it in Europe and not to sort of be naive and give everything to other companies that don't allow us to export. I mean, there has to be some reciprocity, right? I think that would be highly appreciated. We don't have a level playing field today. There's a cost of doing business in Europe that you don't find in other markets. And instead of relaxing the regulations in Europe, we do want people to have a decent salary. We want them to have decent working conditions. We want them to have a pension plan. Well, let's find a way to force other countries outside of Europe to respect our ways of doing business. I don't think Chinese companies need to submit ESG reports and transparency acts and taxonomy and spend a lot of time on that. But let's make sure we value that when we do the auctions also. It's not only about price, it's also about the non-price criteria. And if you want to take it even further, the resilience auctions, which we have seen in other industries, where you prioritize European providers. I think that would be highly appreciated. Europe cannot be the only region in the world that is open to free trade. If the Americans and the Asians close us out, then there won't be anybody left in Europe. But I heard all the good things, so to me it's about executing it. I think it's the first time I hear such a strong message from the Commission on the intention and willingness to keep European industry in Europe, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, and we heard that as well in the speech of Ursula von der Leyen, that made it very clear in her State of the Union, the future our clean tech industry has to be made in Europe, and Europe will do whatever it takes. Very, very strong words. Would you like to say something else on this, to make it even more concrete than what was said earlier?
No, I would say that I think here, thank you very much for your comment, because it just proves that I think we did the proper diagnosis, and now we need to find the cure, the medicines, and the proper treatment to address all these issues. My only request here would be that we need to have, I would say, this type of the discussions. Of course, here in Brussels, we need you have it with the Commission. We need to have them in the European Parliament. We need to have them in the national capitals, especially with our trade colleagues, with the colleagues who are responsible for industry developments in the member states. Because I think that the world has changed dramatically over the last couple of years, and therefore also I think we have to adjust our policies. And I agree with you. What would be the most important would be the executions. How quickly we can deliver on these proposals, these commitments I presented to you. How can we be practical? And how can we work, and that would be my second request, on the concrete projects, because I think that we need to deliver on a couple of big projects just to show that we know how to do it, to learn from it, and to kind of multiply that experience also to other projects. This is how we started with gigafactories in Europe. I mean, it works. It's a learning process. You are kind of starting really not only on the green field, but I would say green lab, because many of the technologies just haven't been here a couple of years ago, and many of them are still in the lab. So I mean, by 2030, hopefully they will be kind of used as a testing or industrial scale level. So I think it would be our common task, and therefore I am a big friend of interaction, structured cooperation, exchange of views, and focusing on concrete projects, because that's really, you can mark it, so we will have more % than 4 next time, and we can show that we know how to do this. So that would be my request to the audience.
Let's check next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we are reaching the end of this keynote opening. Maybe one last sentence from the chair and the vice chair of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. One sentence, one key recommendation for executive vice presidents for this period and maybe for the next commission as well.
So, I mean, I think if the executive vice president delivers everything he promises, then I have nothing more to recommend to him.
My team is getting very scared. You see, I'm not.
He has absolutely recognized what we need. He's given us a very, very clear ask as an industry, and I have made a note to ask someone to go away and provide precisely what you've asked for. And I think the only additional thing I would say, as we come towards the end of this. I always forget the word for the commission, but as we come to the end of this
political cycle.
Thank you, this political cycle, nice. Really, it's already 2023, and we need to start looking towards 2035 and 2040, because we have not wasted, but certainly not progressed with the speed that we needed over the last 3 years. And it needs to be very, very clear that the stick that is already on the table today, that the stick continues, whether it's with targets or through other means, through 2035, through 2040, for those long cycle planning projects that will require the billions that you're looking forward to talking to us about.
Håkon, one sentence, 30 seconds, please.
I agree with Olivia. If we can work on the carrot, make it bigger. But don't make it last 15 years, but make it bigger for a short period of time. Work on the local content regulations. I think that, to me, will take us a long way forward. And then, let's be resilient. Let's not give up on green hydrogen, because there is a lot of progress happening and waiting to happen. So let's not, be defeated by all the lobbyists out there speaking negatively about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is needed. The Commission put it front and center of the energy transition strategy, and I hope that will continue in the coming years. So, again, if you deliver on some, not all, but even on all, okay? Is that what we go for, Olivia? All, okay. 100% of what you said today. I guess I will be here next year and be very happy.
Okay.
Well, that will be the words to conclude this exclusive fireside chat. Thank you very much to the two of you. A round of applause, please. While we leave the stage, I'll call the next speaker on stage, Martin Tengler from Bloomberg, and he will give you a market outlook on renewable hydrogen.